Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the end of day 2 of E3. I'm Jack Gardner, and with me are 3 people, as opposed to 2 people yesterday. Who wants to introduce themselves first?
I will. I'm Naomi Lugo.
You pronounce the middle initial there?
Yep.
Is that what we're doing?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm Marcus Stewart.
No middle name?
I do. I'm just not going to be like Naomi. It's called being an individual.
Oh, okay.
And we
Get him,
have...
Zach. Get him.
And I am Zach. And I'm back.
Oh, you've been working on that one.
I made it up myself.
Is the back also spelled B-A-K?
Yes, it is.
Marcus, you are so sassy tonight.
So sassy.
You're just
Why are you so sassy?
snapping at everyone.
Who hurt you?
I don't know.
And in this
Sarcasm
we
is
go
becoming
deep
a reflex.
into the psyche of Marcus.
So we've seen a lot of games today, and it's been a long, crazy show, and I guess we've run into technical difficulties that prevent us from uploading these episodes right after the fact. So you're gonna be listening to them probably 4 days after E3.
But that's okay because there's tons to see and hear about at E3,
Yes.
so you're just going to be able to catch up on all of the goodness. So we appreciate you listening.
We're parsing it out for you.
Yeah.
So what did you guys see? What were the big highlights? You don't have to go over everything because goodness knows there's too many things to actually talk about at E3. But what were, let's say, 2 to 3 highlights from your day?
Well...
I feel like Naomi should go last because no
Well,
one's going to top it.
Yeah, Naomi should go last.
No, just go, Naomi.
I saw a pretty rad thing today.
Some indie game.
So yeah, a small game that you might have heard of called Cyberpunk 2077 by CD Projekt Red. So I stood in standby for about 2 hours to see it. Got lucky, got in to see their 15-minute demo. And in the demo, we saw gameplay. Like, it was actually a lot of content, so it was really cool. So yeah, it is indeed going to be a first-person shooter, but there are cutscenes where you will see your character, which is completely customizable. And the combat was pretty much what you'd expect from CD Projekt Red Cyberpunk Edition. The weapons were cool. Everything's gonna be customized with mech upgrades. Like, there's a part in the demo where they took out your character's eyeball and it was still on, and like you could see your body as they moved the eyeball across and like worked on it and then stuck it back in your eye. So tons of cyberpunk goodness there. So yeah.
What about I hear the main character is customizable?
Yeah, you can be male or female and customize them however you want. So they showed us the screen for that pretty briefly. It looked like there was a lot of hair color, eye color options and all that jazz, but I'm pretty sure you're just going to get your gear as you go along. Oh, and the jacket that you wear is going to be kind of like your gear as well. You get upgrades into it, and then there's this system called like street cred. So your street cred is like uploaded into your jacket, I think.
I'm quite familiar with that system. I've lived that system for a long time.
you live with the street cred jacket system?
I help consult.
How high is your jacket street cred? What level are you at?
I've accrued a lifetime of credits.
So like 3?
So the collar is multiple feet high.
That's not how it works. It doesn't just get bigger and bigger.
I saw some of those cyberpunk collars. They were pretty big.
It can only get so high before you start losing credit.
And they were glue. It was like these tall LED collars that they were wearing.
So yeah, there cosplayers who were hired by CD Projekt Red, and one of the cosplayers, the male, was actually Maul cosplay, I think his name is, and he does a fantastic Geralt, and I think he did like a Geralt calendar, like officially from CD Projekt Red. So.
Yeah, he's kind of like their in-house cosplay guy.
Like he is Geralt. And then there was a female as well, and they were both wearing these jackets with the LED around the collar, and it was pretty awesome.
They were pretty styling.
I'm hoping to snag a picture with them and snag their jackets. Yep.
You heard it here first, folks.
Naomi's gonna commit some crimes.
But it'll raise your street cred.
Because apparently the more street cred you get, the more fabric. So like if you're just like walking around as this giant jacket, you're just like the coolest person who's ever existed.
When it becomes like a parka.
Oh my god, you see that person? They're so cool. You see how big their jacket is?
I've never heard anyone say that about any big jacket.
Zach, what did you see today that you were super excited about?
I saw a bunch of stuff, but I'm gonna combine today and yesterday.
Yeah, because you...
I'm gonna say I saw a trifecta, a holy trinity of zombie games.
Nice.
Ooh, okay.
My very first E3 game ever was the Resident Evil 2 remake, better known as Resident Evil 2. And is good. It looks to someone who is not playing like Resident Evil 6 over the shoulder camera, hold L2 to aim, R2 to shoot. But when you're playing it, it feels a lot like Resident Evil 7. Very slow movement, although you can sprint, which makes things more manageable. But, scary, haunted house vibes. The police station is like what you remember from Resident Evil 2, but just completely reimagined in the new Resident Evil 7 engine. Really grisly moments of crazy gore and violence, like a little wild.
Does it follow the structure of the original game, or have they kind of gone and done their own thing?
It looks like it follows the structure in terms of the map layout is roughly the same, although just from what I saw in the map, but individual moments are just completely different. It's reimagined from ground zero, using the original game as less of a blueprint and more of just an inspiration. Like, I imagine that, they won't mess with, like, canon or anything, although I'm sure they'll be adding a lot of stuff. And probably behind the scenes with other characters, although it's like, they only showed Leon. There's no word yet on A game and B game. It's just those opening halls that everyone is familiar with about Resident Evil 2. The demo started in the police station, so there's nothing outside.
Okay, so then, like, the classic intro of you in the streets fighting to the police station.
Right, it's presumably in the game, but the demo itself was Leon in the police station alone. He sees a cop, which is new, not in the original. He sees a cop on a computer monitor getting attacked, and he follows him and finds him dead, and then meets Marvin Branagh, who is from Resident Evil 2. So it's familiar and new. It's a lot like in those terms, it's a little bit like the original Resident Evil remake, but probably straying even further away, just because of the combination of different game styles.
Okay, and you said a trifecta, so what were the other two?
The other two they're gonna be seen as competing rival titles. One of them is coming sooner, and the other one's coming a little later. The Walking Dead and World War Z. They're both 4-player co-op shooters coming to PC and console, and they're both based on popular media franchises. The Walking Dead was a comic book and a television series, as we know. And World War Z was a book, and then that was made into a movie. And the movie's sequel's been announced. We'll see how that turns out. And I think they're both kind of like... They're inspired by their source material, but not really beholden to it. Like, they take what they like from it and form a 4-player co-op shooter around that. But aside from that, they really couldn't be more different. The Walking Dead is more of a survival type game, and World War Z is like a straight up crazy insane shooter with just those visuals that you know from the movie of the zombies moving like ants on top of each other and scaling walls. Seeing that happen in real time with 500 zombies on screen at once, it kind of eats Days Gone's lunch.
Interesting. And it's going to be coming out before Days Gone, right?
2019.
2019. Days Gone comes out.
Days Gone has an early 2019 release date.
February 22nd.
Okay.
World War Z is 2019.
Yeah, Days Gone is it's February 22nd.
Well, and from what you said, it kind of sounds like it's going to be like a Left 4 Dead type situation. 4-player co-op, getting from point A to point B, completing some certain objectives. Which is different than Days Gone.
Yeah. Days Gone is an open world, just in terms of like that imagery of a swarm of zombies attacking a player. They both have that imagery, and in World War Z it was just nuts. and teaming with 3 other people who were playing, 2 developers and another journalist. Just seeing them scale a wall and throwing a grenade to the bottom of it and knocking the whole thing down, and like they just all fall down and go flying. I've never seen something that looked like that.
Interesting. And you also played Spyro, right? I know you've already brought up kind of 3 games, but...
Oh yeah, Spyro was another, it's one of those... It's a game that people are kind of taking for granted, or at least people aren't like rushing to go play Spyro, partly because they know it, partly because it's not new, sort of, because although it's more of a remake than something like Resident Evil 2. Like, I joked that the first 2 games that I played were PS1 games. I played Resident Evil 2 right after I played Spyro. Spyro, was one of my childhood favorites. Like, I can play the original Spyro the Dragon in my sleep. 100% off the back of my hand. So I'm a little nervous because I want it to feel perfect. I want it to feel exactly like Spyro felt. The way Crash Insane Trilogy felt good, but not perfect. And because, I know Crash physics, I know how Crash 1, 2, and 3 feel. And the Insane Trilogy was close, but when it wasn't perfect, you felt it and it hurt. Spyro aims not to be perfect, but to be better. And it's a little unfair to compare them, like, so apples to apples, because Spyro is a 3D platformer, sandbox type of, find all the gems, they're around here somewhere. And the way the new game handles the 3D movement is a lot smoother than they did back in the PS1 days. And I was dodging enemy attacks a lot more easily than I used to. Although there are some like little things that are just different, not necessarily better or worse, like in the original, kind of to compensate for how Spyro kind of turned a little slower than he does now. You could... there were enemies who would throw projectiles at you. The example here was little guys who throw banana chunks at you, like a bushel of bananas. A bushel? I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah.
But you could charge through them, and here, if you try to charge through them, you get hit. You take damage. But it's so much easier to dodge them. And it feels really good. It feels better than I imagined that it would. And it almost feels sacrilegious to think it, but it feels better than it did on PS1.
All right. Good feedback on Spyro the Dragon. Coming to a console near you.
September, right?
Sure, we'll go with that.
Ish.
It's this fall.
September sounds good.
Yeah.
Marcus.
Hey, yo.
Mr. Stewart, what
That's
did
me.
you see today with your eyeballs and your hands?
Some stuff. Well, unlike these two, since I'm an individual, I'm gonna start with something that you probably haven't.
Diss track over here.
I'm gonna start with a game you probably haven't heard, because I had not heard of it at all until I played it. It's a game called Ninjala. It's actually you guys have probably seen it because it's literally when you go into the West Hall. It's that first game that's like that big booth with
They're
the people that
handing
have the
out
bats.
Giant bats, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
How
It's
was
like
actually
right on the right
playing
side.
it?
It's fun. It's like
What
so.
is it?
It's very Splatoon-y. That's the first thing I thought of looking at it, is a very strong Splatoon vibe, just the way the character models are and the color palette. It is a arena multiplayer kind of like competitive game and it has this wacky Splatoon-esque premise of you control characters who blow bubble gum, and the entire gameplay is based around gum. So there's a button to blow a bubble, and you can blow it as like to ridiculous size, and that's how you spawn your weapon. So, but the strength and the type of the weapon depends on how big the bubble you blow. So if you blow a smaller bubble and pop it, you'll get a weapon that's really fast but does like okay damage, and if you blow a big bubble and pop it, you'll get a really big weapon that does great damage but it's really slow. So you have to but also,
is this based off of Bazooka Joe?
No, it may as well be Bazooka Joe the game though,
because that's kind of awesome.
And you're like in a city. At least the level I played, the arena was in a city, and so you have to hold a button down to blow. But at the same time, other players can hit you and stop you from blowing your bubble. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to pick your spots and decide, like, okay, what do I need for this situation? Do I want a quick thing or a big thing? What do I have time for? And you can also blow the bubble and then detach it and throw it at people. And if they get hit, they'll get stuck in the gum, and that'll leave them vulnerable for you to just wail on them with your bat. And then when they die, they drop points. And the way it goes is that the player that has the most points by the end wins.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fun. It's crazy. Like, again, I had not heard of this at all.
Does it look like it's the kind of thing that has like some longevity besides its multiplayer?
I don't. There were other modes I noticed in the menu. There was only one that they were showing. Yeah. They were also doing a competitive tournament there that you could play against other players. I was playing against the AI, and they were doing a tournament with like 8 players or something like that.
They were doing a really good job bringing the hype.
It was a big.
I noticed.
It was a big booth for something that I'd never heard.
Right in the front door.
Like, were you guys familiar with this at all? Am I the only one?
I had never heard those words until you said them.
Yeah, and I think it might only be on Switch. That all the demo stations that I saw were Switches.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a Switch exclusive.
Yeah, it's like it kind of came out of nowhere, and it looks cool.
It seems odd that they'd be doubling down, like, not doubling down, but like, it seems like the Splatoon style gameplay could do well outside of just the Switch, you know?
Yeah, like it doesn't have Splatoon's like kind of like urban hip hoppy kind of vibe that it goes for, like, but there is personality there that it evokes Splatoon in a way. It's almost like Splatoon's cousin. Really. I think that's actually a great analogy for it.
Yeah, okay.
So it's fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I would like to see more of it. I think the gentleman that was showing me it said that it might be next year, I believe.
Okay.
The other 2 games that I want to talk about, I went over to Microsoft's booth for the first time today, and I got to play Ashen, which is that cool little indie game that Microsoft shown the last 2 E3s in a row. Mm-hmm. It is a Dark Souls third-person action game that has this really unique art style. I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. You should probably just Google image it, but it's like geometric shapes. Like your characters look like they're made out of like blocks and cubes. Like they don't have facial features, but you can customize your look, like skin color, like facial hair, but they don't have like eyes. Or they kind of like wooden artist dolls.
Mannequins?
Not mannequins. You know those little wood dolls that artists use, and they
put
like
the
what do you call them? Like
the shape thing. Oh my
like
gosh.
you put clay over it to like when you're trying to sculpt something.
It's like a figure sculpture almost.
Yeah.
One might say a mannequin.
Well, a mannequin's a different thing.
Yeah, with more points of articulation.
Yeah, they look different than a mannequin.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I do.
None
of them do, but
I'm thinking like the mannequin dolls from like Devil May Cry.
Oh no, definitely less terrifying. But yeah, that's the closest thing to think of. Again, Google it. But yeah, it's an open world Dark Souls-esque, very like stamina. You have a heavy attack and a light attack. You can lock on enemies. You have a dodge enemies. You have to study enemy patterns. what's cool about this is an emphasis on co-op, so you can have buddies jump in and explore with you. It's a big world and there's dungeons everywhere, so, and dungeon crawling is a big part of it. A lot of trailers have only shown the dungeon crawling, so a lot of people weren't aware that it's just a big world that those dungeons inhabit. Or if you play alone, you'll have an AI buddy, and thankfully the AI is extremely competent and reliable. My partner that I had, I often just let him do his own thing, and he would take down multiple dudes by himself.
Awesome.
And he even would finish off dudes that I was fighting, so that's a problem solved there.
All right.
But there's also a town building element where I took over abandoned camp, and then I got a thing, and then I claimed a town, and it was under my name, and then allies you recruit will become citizens of the town.
Cool.
So it's got that going too. So it's an amalgamation of ideas, but it felt really polished, and again, it looks cool, just presentation wise. I want to play more of it, and that launches this fall.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to that.
And the last game I want to talk about is Below.
Oh yeah.
Game that's been floating in the ether for what feels like an eternity now. It's Capybara. You played Super Time Force. They did that.
Yep.
They've been working on this for the last 5 years now.
It's been a long time.
I think it was 2013 that it was announced. It had multiple release dates, and then they got to the point where it's done when it's done.
Yeah.
They stopped dating it. It's a mix of top-down classic Zelda with Dark Souls. If you haven't seen it, it's got this great kind of minimalist, dark look to it. And the idea is that you're just kind of dungeon crawling and just trying to see how far down this... you always start on the beach.
You want to find out what's below.
Exactly. And in the Dark Souls way, you will always spawn on the beach that you start off with. You light campfire, but you also have survival elements where you have to cook food, you have to monitor your thirst and your hunger, and so you have to catch food, you get recipes for stew, you fill a canteen of water, and then if you don't, then you'll die.
Okay.
But even though you'll find other campfires, and eventually you can turn those into checkpoints, but you'll also, like Dark Souls, find shortcuts back to that beach, so you're not always making the same run. And then like Zelda, you got the sword, you're cutting grass to find stuff. Enemies are coming at you. It's got a wonderful, kind of very moody, atmospheric soundtrack that kind of evokes a cavernous feel. I was surprised at how much I liked the soundtrack. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of fun. Every time you get to a new level and you start going down again, you're like, oh, I want to see what's down here. I want to keep going. And it like Dark Souls, you get that sense of reward when you find something that's like a breakthrough. Okay, I can make this stew now. Okay, I'm gonna last a little longer this time, or I found a new shortcut. It was nice to play that game. Still on a release date on it.
Okay. It's nice to know that it exists.
Yeah, so they're still working on it, but it looks like it's coming along nicely. So.
All right, cool. I saw a couple games today that I was pretty excited about. One of them is called Black Future, I think. And it is kind of drawing from a lot of different 80s films and stories and sounds and stuff. The basic premise is you are in this dystopian cyberpunk, noir kind of future where it's an alternate version of what would have happened if World War III had broken out between the United States and Russia. And you have some kind of blood disease or infection that is going to make your heart explode in 18 minutes. And your goal is to... You're just going on a suicidal revenge mission against this corporation and their tower, and it turns out that the tower's alive and it's full of people who want to kill you, and you can play co-op. There are 3 playable characters in the build I saw, and each character kind of has their own special ability. The one I played had a triple jump as opposed to a double jump. A lot of the weapons are mobility based. So, for example, I found a gun that when you shoot it and it hits an enemy, you swap places with the enemy.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it was really cool.
Hmm.
And so you find all these different things, and then every time you beat a boss, you get a boss buff, which changes kind of how your dash works, and you also kind of get an additional thing that upgrades your dash. So basically, anytime you're getting an upgrade in this game, if it's not a gun, it's like some kind of a movement-based thing, which is neat. And then you can sometimes find stores where you can spend the in-game currency, or you can spend your time. You can use your time as a currency. And you have to get through 5 floors, and each floor is randomized, and each one has a boss on it. Or you can go down to like the creepy sewers of the building, where a bunch of roided up monsters live. And if you make it through that level, you can take the Murder Vader, which is an elevator of murder.
Of course it is.
And that will allow you to skip one of the floors. So you're kind of weighing your options at any given point in time. And it was really interesting, really great soundtrack, great pixel art aesthetic, and the intro cinematic is really cool and neat and kind of creepy. So that really stood out to me. Another game I saw today was with a company called Little Orbit, and they have kind of made a habit of going around and picking up Kickstarter and crowdfunding games that made it but then kind of fell apart into disasters. One of the things I actually learned while I was talking with them, they're the publisher who picked up Unsung Story, which, if that name rings a bell, it's because a couple years ago they launched a Kickstarter campaign which made a bunch of promises to their backers, and it was going to be this turn-based RPG designed by the person who made Final Fantasy Tactics, and even composed by the same composer who did Final Fantasy Tactics. And that all kind of started falling apart.
It's amazing how on the nose that name is.
Unsung Story, yes. But Little Orbit kind of came in, and they're publishing the game, and so it's still going to get made, and I'm really excited. I was really excited to learn that. But I got to see they did this same thing with another game that they were actually showing today, which was it's just called Descent, and some of you older gamers might recognize Descent as being this free motion shooter game from the 90s.
It's like an old man. It's like, I remember Descent.
And basically, they're taking that classic Descent formula of, complete 3D spaceship exploration, combat, and combining it with a co-op sensibility, so you can have up to 4 people playing at the same time, going through levels. And there's also a narrative component where you're in kind of a dystopian future, and you're working to get enough resources to get your family kind of out of poverty. It looked like it played really well, and if you're into that kind of game, which is kind of niche, I know, but it looked worth your time and worth checking out when it does release. I believe it's coming out later this year.
Okay.
And the third and final thing that I saw that I was pretty interested in, it's made by the guys who made Hard West, which is a turn-based tactics RPG for the PC. But they're making a game that's basically a turn-based tactics RPG, but with spies instead of steampunk Western stuff. And so you can play as international spy assassin, and you get to lead your own bureau. And it's set during the Cold War, and it's pretty gosh darn accurate down to even the littlest things. The one thing they pointed out to me that they got wrong is that they in dossiers where they include kind of like passports and money, they accidentally screwed up one of the Canadian dollar bills, which I guess came out a year after the game is supposedly set. So if you're really big on currency, you're going to notice that, but I'm kind of a sucker for those little details, so I found that pretty interesting. It looked great. It basically, you go into a mission and you have a disguise of some kind, and your job is to infiltrate facilities or do spy things. And then if you can do an entire mission without blowing your cover. It's very possible to do that. But if your cover is blown, then it turns into a turn it's always turn based, but it will turn into gunfights and stuff like that. And then you add into the mix that you can abduct enemy agents and kind of indoctrinate them into your side or interrogate them for information. But everything that you can do to enemy agents can do to your agents. So if you happen to leave a soldier behind or they get incapacitated while on a mission, they might show up again and rejoin you, but they might have been brainwashed with a code word to undermine the mission.
So they become the Winter Soldier?
Yeah, basically. Basically, you can... One of the things you can do is you can actually abduct an enemy agent, implant them with a code word, and then send them back out into the world, and you can encounter them on a future mission, and they'll swap over to your side in the middle of the mission.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so like stuff like that, and then it's combined with this strong single-player narrative where players do the typical clue figuring out thing where on your missions you'll uncover bits of intel, and once you have enough of these pieces of intel, you can put them up on a corkboard, and your job is to kind of connect them and try and figure out what's going on in the story. And it does actually feel like the way they did it actually feels kind of like you are detecting and figuring things out, which I really appreciated. So that was a pretty interesting game. I can't remember it off the top what the name of it was off the top of my head, but it was pretty great. So
cool.
Yeah.
That game.
What
would you name it?
Spy Stuff 79.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yep.
I'd buy it.
I don't think you would. I think you're just saying that.
If it was on sale, I'd consider it.
If it was on Switch?
If it was on a Humble Bundle?
I mean, but Humble Bundle's just...
If it was on the Steam Winter Sale, it may...
Does anyone even look at what's in a Humble Bundle anymore? They just throw $5 and...
Humble Bundle.
Was it...
Okay, we're too tired.
Sure.
We're too tired.
$5.
Yes, it was Phantom Doctrine. Thank you. Phantom Doctrine.
Was that the game?
That's what I'm here for.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
God, what did you guys do yesterday? The podcast must have been a mess.
It was terrible.
Well, my part was great.
As always.
Yeah, because you're an individual.
Just impeccable. Yeah,
All right, and that was day 2. We'll be making another one of these.
We had great chemistry.
Unless we kill each other, which is very likely.
It is so possible.
Hope you have a great day. You look really handsome. Bye.
You look really handsome.
I don't know, some people like me.